What is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today we are going to be going through some of my favorite U23 options for under £50. As always, guys, please make sure to like and subscribe, and if you've got any questions, please let me know down in the comments, and let's get into the video. Okay, so our first player is David Affengruber, who plays in the Austrian Bundesliga for Sturm Graz. All of these players will be players that have U23 for next season as well. And obviously, some will have 2-3 games left this season. However, you can then use them next season. Anyway, he is U23 until 2025. And yeah, he's someone who is around that £16-17 mark. He's someone which actually has quite a lot of peak scores as well. You can see here there are quite a few scores in that 20 to 30 point range. A few sub games, a few games where he's just got bad AA. Overall, Sturm Graz are always going to be one of the better teams in the Austrian Bundesliga. And yeah, he's someone which, down to those lower scores, brings that L15 down. However, can get you those higher dark greens. In terms of when he starts, he's averaging in the last year 49.3 with 11.5 AA, 3 goals, 2 assists. If we have a look at his home and away split, 47.7 at home and away from home is 51. So he is slightly better away from home, which is a little bit unusual, but centre backs, when they're playing away from home, normally have to make more tackles and interceptions, that sort of stuff. So that's not always unexpected. And yeah, he's a very, very solid option. Obviously, you can use him next year as well. And for his price range, around that £16-17 mark, I think is very, very good value. Next up, we have Nicolas Castro, who plays for Elche in the Spanish second div. He, once again, is U23 until 2025. In terms of his price currently, a few sales here recently at £32, £22 and £30. Obviously, the highest sales are the in-season cards. For Classic, you're probably looking around that £20 to £22 mark, and new season probably around £30. He's someone that I believe Elche are near the top of the Spanish second div, maybe second or third, so there is that chance of them going up into the Spanish first div, which means that you will obviously get a champion player for next season. However, his scores probably won't be as good. You probably want him to actually stay down in that second div for next season. And yeah, he's got 4 games left. I'm not sure what's going to go on with his contract that ends in 2024. And with all of these players, please always do your own research as well in terms of contracts, and if they're perhaps going out on loan or going to a different team, perhaps it's already been announced. So just do your own research. But yeah, he's someone that has scored very, very well recently, nice and consistent. If we get rid of the games that he hasn't started, he's averaging 57.9 with 15.2 AA, 5 goals, 4 assists, and played 27 games in the last year. So that's a DA every 3 games, which is quite good for a midfielder. And he also has a nice bit of AA at 15.2, which helps brings those scores up. Probably the biggest downside with him is the lack of upside. A lot of his scores are coming in that 40 to 60 point range. However, if you can then pair him with a scorer that has those peak scores, he can be someone that gives you a really nice baseline. And for his price range, he's definitely worth picking up, but obviously keep an eye on that contract situation. Next up, we have Moritz Kjærgaard, who plays for Salzburg in the Austrian Bundesliga once again. Now, he's someone who is U23 for a long time, until 2027, and he's also got a contract till 2026, which is great. He is currently injured with a hamstring injury, which has brought his price right down. You see some recent sales down here around that £35 to £38 mark, which is good in terms of it's probably quite a nice time to actually purchase him. He's someone that obviously has a lot of U23 left in him, which is great in terms of buying him now and using him in U23 for a long time. If we have a look at his scores, obviously a injury here and also an injury here as well. So a little bit of worry there. I'm not sure if it was the same injury. However, just keep an eye on that. But yeah, he's someone that when he's fit scores very, very well. We'll get rid of the games that he was out injured. averaging 58.5, 14.9 AA, 8 DAs in 21 games. So yeah, roughly round that sort of 1 every 3 game mark. And yeah, it's overall a very, very nice scorer. Plays on the left-hand side of midfield. Obviously, Salzburg always one of the best, if not the best team in Austria. And you also do get Champions League football with them as well, which is quite a nice upside. Just getting a little bit more utility. I didn't actually check with him. He is from Denmark. He isn't yet playing for them. We'll just double check that on all. Yeah, no games for Denmark yet. However, Salzburg are always good at bringing through youth players, and it opens up that possibility of him moving to a bigger team in Europe. And yeah, if he stays at Salzburg next season, he's going to get you some really nice scores, and you know that he's always going to play when he's fit. And they've normally always got a really good matchup as well. Sticking with the Austrian Bundesliga, we've got Matthäus Taferner, who plays for Tyrol. He is U23 until 2025. No information about his contract here, so keep an eye on that. He has some recent sales here, £26 and £39, so somewhere in that price range. Obviously, the Austrian Bundesliga is coming to an end, but like I mentioned earlier, you can use all these players in U23 next season. In terms of his scores, he's probably one of my favourite players on this list, just because he can get you those mid-70 scores from purely AA, which is quite rare for players in this sort of price range. Normally, for those heavy AA players, you're obviously going to pay a premium, So yeah, he's getting all of his scores with very little DA action. And yeah, 23.1 AA is great. Very, very solid scorer. Plays every game. And you can see there's barely any games here that he scores under 50. A couple of low scores there, 27 and 28. One was just in a 4-1 loss, not a lot of AA there. And the other one was, once again, interesting enough, both games were against Wolfsberger. So maybe it's something about how they actually play against Tyrol, maybe their system, which causes him to actually score less. But yeah, overall, some really nice scores. Even in games, for instance, against Sturm Graz, a very, very good team, still had 36.7 AA, which is crazy. Interesting to see how he did against Salzburg. Where are they? Yeah, 27 AA against Salzburg here, getting you a 62. And yeah, with players that score a lot of AA, the nice thing is that you can basically play them in any matchup, and he should get you one of these middle range scores, and then has that possibility of scoring in the late 70s and a couple of scores above 90, which is also great as well. Next up, we have Bradley Locko, who is 22 years old, U23 until 2026, and also has a contract until 2027, which is great. He plays in the French Ligue 1 with Brest, and in terms of his pricing, his most recent 2 sales are £43 and £53, somewhere in that £40 to £50 mark. He's someone which, once again, is a really, really consistent scorer. He plays at left back. And yeah, he's someone that gives you a lot of AA, which is always nice. And being a fullback, sometimes that can be a little bit hit or miss just with the scoring matrix. But yeah, in 32 games here, 3 assists, so not a lot of DAs. However, a lot of AA and a lot of scores, as you can see here, in that 60 to 80 range. The biggest downside with him is only 1 score above 80, which does limit his upside. However, you can play him in most game weeks, even in bad matchups. For instance, here in this game against Lyon, they let him 4. He also got booked, and he still scored 69.66, which is really, really good. So he gives you a really nice, solid mid-range. A few bad scores down here, but that's going to be the case for a lot of players. It's very, very rare that they don't have those sort of off weeks. 2 games left for the season, but obviously you can use him until 2026 in U23, which is great. And yeah, just a really, really nice, solid scorer. Next, we're moving to the Croatian League with Niko Galešić, who plays for Rijeka. He is 23 years old and is U23 until 2025. His most recent sales, the last 2, are £16 and £24, so somewhere probably around that £20 mark as an average. In terms of his scores, There's 3 games left in the Croatian League, but obviously you can still use them next season. He's someone which, if we get rid of all the sub games, averages 54.8, 24 games played, 5 DAs, and 16.6 AA. You can see here, especially recently, all of these scores are really, really nice. And yeah, they've been one of the best teams in Croatia this season. They've actually been challenging Zagreb, which is obviously rare. If they can keep hold of their best players, they'll be good for next season as well. And you can see, especially when they're at home, 3 games here with a clean sheet, another clean sheet here, another clean sheet here against Split, another one here against Gorica. So I expect if you split his scores, yeah, he's averaging 56.3 when he plays at home, which is great, and 100. He'll be a little bit lower when he's away from home. That's normal for a lot of players. But yeah, overall at his price range, around that sort of £15 to £20 mark, I think he's a really, really nice option, and someone that you know when he's fit, he's also going to play every game as well. On to our next player, Alejandro Francés, who plays in the Spanish second div for Real Zaragoza. He's someone that is U23 until 2027, which is really nice. In terms of his prices, most recent sale was £19, and before that £20, so it's going to be around that £20 mark. They've got 4 games left, and obviously you can then use him next season as well. He's someone which is very, very consistent in that mid-range. You can see that in the last year, 13 of his scores are in that 50 to 60 point range. So he's very, very consistent. His biggest downside is that he doesn't really have much of an upside. He's very good at getting you that 50 to 60 score, however, only 1 score in that 80 to 90 range. So you're going to need to pair him with some players that have a bit more upside. But yeah, he's a very, very solid player. Basically plays every game, whether it's centre back or left back. And yeah, for his price range, I think he's a nice squad option that you can just plug and play, know that he's going to start, and he's basically going to get you somewhere in that 50 to 60 point range. Okay, on to our next player, Sepp van der Berg, who plays in the Bundesliga for Mainz. He is 22 years old, U23 until 2026. His contract is up in 2024, so just keep an eye on if he's staying at Mainz or moving on. They've got 2 games left, however you can use him till 2026, obviously. In terms of his pricing, the last few sales, £28 and £35, so probably around £30 on average. Excuse me. In terms of his scores, he's fairly similar to our last option, in that he's very consistent in that mid-range. You can see in the last year, 16 scores in that 40 to 60 range. He does give you a little bit more upside with 4 scores in that 80 to 90 range. And yeah, someone that is very, very consistent, a little bit more upside, but not loads. In terms of his home and away split, he's very, very similar away from home and home, which means you can play him in most matchups. And he has got a few DAs as well, especially recently in these 3 games here with some last man tackles. But yeah, overall, just another really solid squad option. Obviously gives you a couple more years of utility as well, which is always nice. But yeah, just keep an eye on his contract and do your own research on this one. Next on the list, we have Victor Kristiansen, who plays in the Serie A for Bologna. He is U23 till 2027, which is great. His last sales are around that £13 to £14 mark, so he's nice and cheap. The main reason that I've put him on this list is that he is also a starter for Denmark, which is very, very rare for players of his age and also price range. So he does give you a little bit of that international utility as well. Obviously, he hasn't scored overall great for them. If we have a look at his previous scores, he's been better recently when he's got a little run of fixtures here. And hopefully he can make that left back / left wing back role his own. In terms of his scores for Bologna, he's someone that recently has been very, very good. If we look at this cluster of scores here from game week 445 onwards, very rarely scored below 45. He's averaging 13.2 AA in his last 24 games. Yeah, you can see, especially in this run here, Bologna have seemed to hit a little bit of form, only one loss in their last sort of 10 to 12 games. And yeah, lots of AA recently, which is very, very nice. And obviously being U23 until 2027 is good in terms of his future utility. Our next player is Emre Topçu, who plays for Rizerspoor in the Turkish league. He is U23 until 2025 and has a contract till then, which is great as well. In terms of his recent sales, a sale here at £24 and one hit at £22. So somewhere around that £20 to £25 mark you're looking at. They have got 3 fixtures left. Obviously, you can use him for next season. And he's probably one of my favourite players on this list, purely down to his upside. You can see here in the last year, he has got 3 scores in that 90 to 100 range, 2 in the 80 to 90, and 4 in the 70 to 80. So he does give you that upside. You can see that he gets a little bit more in terms of goals and assists. And I think he might actually be the captain for Rizerspoor as well, which means that he's going to play every game as well. You can see that if we look at his 100 score here, that was purely from AA with 70 AA, which is just crazy. His 82 here, AA once again, 78 here, got 8 assists, but above that, 39 AA here as well. He's someone that just has a crazy amount of AA. And you can see that here, the first player that we've mentioned on this list with over 20 AA, which is just, very, very good. Probably one of my favorite players on this list, pretty for the upside. And if you partner him with some of those other previous players that are a bit more consistent in that mid-range, you then got a really nice balance where the mid-range players sort of keep the floor up, and then he can then get you those big scores to actually push you up into those prizes as well. Okay, and next on the list we have our first Premier League player, which is Callum Hudson-Odoi, who plays for Nottingham Forest. He is U23 until 2025, and he's someone which could have a very, very large difference in terms of his scores next season. Forest, I believe, are 4th bottom, 1 place above the relegation zone. They're basically battling with Luton as to who goes down. If Forest go down into the Championship and he stays, he's going to score some crazy scores. He's done okay, to be fair, in the Premier League. If you have a look at his scores when he's been starting, averaging 57.7 with 12.4 AA, 7 goals, 1 assist in 18 games. So what's that, like a DA every 2 games, which is quite good. And he gets you a little bit of AA as well, 12.4, which is quite rare for a forward, especially in a struggling team. In terms of his price, recent sales here for the in-seasons at 39 and 43, and a few down here at 34 and 35, so probably somewhere between 35 to 45 pounds as a price range. But yeah, his sort of variance in scores could be quite a lot based on whether Nottingham Forest go down. If they do, this sort of price range is very, very nice. And if they don't, to be honest, these sort of scores for a Premier League forward aren't that bad. I believe actually Forest are a little bit better when they're at home as well. He averages 60 at home, which is very, very nice for a player that costs 30 to 40 pounds, and just overall could be a very, very nice option. And obviously keep an eye on whether they're going to stay up or whether they're going down into the Championship. Next up, we have a player I've never actually scouted before, which is Yuto Suzuki, who plays for Bromby in the Superliga. He is U23 until 2026 and has a contract until 2027, which is very, very nice. 4 games left in the Danish league, and then obviously you can then use him for another couple of years as well. In terms of his prices, recently it's set at £50, and before that 36, somewhere in that 30 to 50 pounds mark. And yeah, he's someone which came up on my search purely because recently he's been in a very, very nice run of form. If you look at these last 7 games here, lots of DAs. He doesn't have a lot of AA, 3.3. However, in 14 games, 7 goals and 5 assists. So basically a DA every game. So he's a little bit of a different mold of player, someone that needs to get those DAs to actually score well. But yeah, recently been in really, really good form. Bromby have been on a great run, one of the better teams in that league as well. And yeah, if he can carry on this hot streak, going to be a very, very nice purchase. And obviously, you can then use him until 2026 as well. Next, we have the first player on the list that I actually own personally, which is Suzuki Coridor, who plays in the French second league for Rodez. His last sale here was £40, and before that, 54. So somewhere probably between 40 and 50 pounds. He's someone which has only 2 games left, obviously. However, is a very, very nice scoring forward. Probably doesn't have as much upside as some of the other players. However, for a forward, very, very consistent. In 36 games, he has got 22 DAs, so just over 1 DA every 2 games. Obviously starts every single game, which is very, very nice. And yet, when he gets those DAs, can score you in those sort of mid 60 range. The only downside, really, only a few scores here from 80 to 100. However, it is quite rare that forwards score like that anyway. It gives you quite a safe mid-ground and then a little bit of upside. And he's probably one of those consistent forwards that you can plug and play. Probably quite a good squad option. And then if you can then partner him with some players with some more upside, I think he's a really nice player, especially as you can use him from now all the way through until 2025. And Rodez, I don't believe they can go up. So yeah, they're going to be in the second div next season, which is great for his scores as well. Up next, we have Kisito, who plays in the Eredivisie for Sparta Rotterdam. He is 22 years old and is U23 until 2026. In terms of his recent prices, last few sales at £35, 54 for his in-season, and 35 for his classic. So about 35 for his classic card. And yeah, someone that I have looked at purchasing recently. He's very, very consistent and gets really nice AA for a forward, 11.5. He's probably one of those that lacks a little bit in terms of goals and assists, with 12 in 23 games. Actually not as bad as what I thought, 1 every 2 games, and gives you a bit more of a floor as well with that 11.5 AA. You can see here, when he's fit, always starts on that left-hand side normally. And Sparta are normally one of the better teams in the Eredivisie. Probably not going to have too much chance of relegation and that sort of thing. Always normally quite competitive. And yeah, when he can get those DAs, will get you in that 70 to 80 range and gives you a little bit of that mid-ground as well. And obviously, it's great that you can then use him until 2026. All right, our next player is Jonas Auer, who plays in the Austrian Bundesliga for Rapid Vienna. He is U23 until 2025 and has a contract until 2027. In terms of his recent prices, £16 and £21, somewhere around that £15 to £20 mark. He is currently injured with a toe injury, so I doubt he's going to play the last 2 games. However, obviously, you can use him till 2025, which is nice. In terms of his scores, the reason I picked him was for his upside. I checked, and 2 out of the 3 scores in that 90 to 100 range are from AA on their own, which is very, very nice. He's someone which doesn't really get a lot of DAs from left back, but will get you some nice mid-ground scores from AA alone. And yeah, you can see here, for instance, in this 98 here, 63.46 AA, which is crazy. And yeah, he gives you a lot of upside. Keep an eye on him. He has been linked to some other teams in Austria. And for his price range, probably quite a nice time to buy him with injury and lack of fixtures. And then you can then obviously roll him out next year. And if he does get a move to a better Austrian team, you could also see an increase in these scores as well. Okay, up next we have Matt Smets, who is, I believe, the youngest player on our list at 20 years old and is U23 till 2028, which is crazy. Naturally, he is at the sort of top end of that price range for in-seasons anyway. But classic cards, let's have a look down here. Yeah, around that sort of £25 mark. Which is great for someone that you can roll out in U23 for the next, 3-4 seasons. He's someone that is probably the most consistent, however, does lack the most upside. Basically, all of his sort of half-decent scores in that 60 to 70 point range. Doesn't really get you above 80 only once in the last year. However, he's very, very consistent, 17.7 AA, mainly going to get you somewhere in that 45 to 70 range, and is very rarely going to kill your lineup, but does lack that upside to really push you up into those top prizes. So you'd have to partner him with someone that does have that upside. The main benefits with him is that obviously he's very, very young. These scores can obviously improve as he then gets older. And players like this that are obviously playing lots of games at a young age, they're the ones that are going to get those moves to better clubs. So perhaps if he goes to a Genk or Gen or USG, you could then see these scores take a really big jump, which would be nice. And it only takes a little bit more DA for more of these scores to jump into that 80 to 90 range. And then you then got one of the sort of premium U23 options, which could be very, very nice moving forwards. Okay, our next player on the list is Paul Nebel, who plays for Karlsruhe in the Bundesliga 2. He is 21 years old and U23 until 2027. His contract is up in 2024, so just keep an eye on if he's staying in the Bundesliga 2 or if he's moving to a different club. In terms of his recent sales, a few sales here, £20, £32 and £25, so probably in that £20 to £30 mark. Has 2 games left, and yeah, I think with him, it's just a really solid squad player. In the right matchups, you can see that he gets you in that 70 to 80 range with 3 scores, also in that 80 to 90 range. 33 games, 11 DAs, so 1 every 3 games, 11.3 AA. So he's just quite a solid, consistent scorer, and someone that, yeah, I just think is a nice squad option. Probably not the most like explosive or exciting option, but someone that if you've got in your gallery, you can plug and play. Someone that, yeah, in the right matchup can score very, very well. In terms of his home and away, averages 58.2 at home, so definitely more of a home player. And yeah, 4 really nice scores in the last 4 games there. Away from home is 50. So you definitely want to be playing him at home. He's scoring 8.2 more points at home than away. And yeah, just overall a really, really nice side option. All right, our next player on the list is Daan Rots, who plays in the Eredivisie for SC20. He is U23 until 2026 and has a contract until 2025. So everything looks quite secure for next season. I was actually shocked that a player of his sort of level and quality is on this list for this sort of price range. His last couple of sales, £44 and £41. So he's under that £50 budget, which is nice. 2 games left of the season. And yeah, he's someone that is just a very, very nice card to have. Someone that plays in a 20 team that's going to be one of the best teams in the league as well. And yeah, I mean, 37 games, 17 DAs, 1 every 2 games, 7.5 AA, which is fairly good for a forward. And yeah, just one of those nice options, especially when 20 are at home as well. Let's check his home scores. Yeah, he's averaging 58, which is very, very nice. And, you know, in games when they're playing at home against Excelsior, at home against Vitesse, at home against Pex Volley, home against Riga, like all of these lesser teams in the Dutch league, you can really target those home fixtures, and then put in some of those more premium lineups. And yeah, just a very, very good quality player for this sort of price range. And probably my favourite forward on the list as well. Okay, our next player on the list is Zuriko Davitashvili. I think that's how you say it. Maybe I've butchered it. I'm not too sure. He is 23 years old, U23 until 2025, and under contract till 2027, which is very, very nice. In terms of his recent sales, one here at £35, one here at 28, one here at 32, so probably around that £30 mark as a rough guide. And the main reason that he's on this list is, well, 2 reasons. First of all, recently been on some crazy form for Bordeaux. What's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 DAs in his last 7 games. So on a really rich vein of form. And he also gets some minutes for Georgia as well. Maybe he can get some more permanent time for them, which could be quite nice, especially for this sort of price range. And he's also locked down on a long contract. Bordeaux, I believe, are top. So they may be going up to the French First League, but just double check that. But yeah, overall, a really nice player. If they stay in the French Second Div and he carries on this form, that's obviously very, very nice. If they go up, you've then got a champion forward, which does get some minutes for his national team. And yeah, maybe he can then become their main man up front. And for someone around that sort of £30 price mark, I think that's quite a good price for someone that could have that sort of utility for you and also your gallery as well. Okay, back to the Austrian Bundesliga we go with Nicolas Velechnig. That's how you say it. I don't know. We gave it a good shot. He is 21 years old, U23 until 2027. Contract ends this season, just keep an eye on whether he's staying at Wolfsberger or moving on. In terms of his price, last couple of sales here, £13 and £12. The in-season, a little bit more at sort of 24. But yeah, somewhere around that £13 to £20 price range, I think, is probably the right sort of price for him. He's someone that's been a little bit in and out of the team, but the reason I put him on this list is that when he does play, he scores very, very nicely, and does give you a little bit of upside as well, especially recently. Plays as a sort of right back / right wing back, so can obviously bomb forward and then get some nice AA and DAs as well. And yeah, for someone that's got a someone who is U23 until 2027, he gives you a lot of utility moving forwards. And for if you can get him as his classic card, which is probably worthwhile doing because there's only 2 games left, for £13, I think it's probably a risk worth taking. And yeah, if he stays and nails down that right back spot, it's going to get you some really nice scores next season, and is bound to actually pay you back for that £13 which you pay for him. Okay, our second to last player on the list is Matthäus Taferner. I'm not sure how you say it. 22 years old, U23 until 2026, contract until 2025, which is nice. Last few sales here, £14, £18 and £20. In terms of his scores, the main reason that I like him is that he plays for Ghent, one of the better teams in the Belgium league. His scores are a little bit up and down. However, for someone who plays for one of the better teams, if you look at his starts, gives you a nice sort of middle ground, especially from game week 4-2 onwards. A lot of scores in that 40 to 60 range, and has a little bit of upside, but it's not that regular. But yeah, with him, another 2 seasons of U23, a contract next season, and yeah, playing for one of the best teams in Belgium. If you can just take a little bit of a jump forward and just get that AA up from 12 to 15, 16, and get another 3-4 goals and a few more assists, you've then got one of the sort of premium mids that is playing for one of the best teams in Belgium, and then obviously you can then partner him with some players that can get a little bit more upside as well. So yeah, overall a really nice squad player, and for his price range currently, I think he's probably quite a good purchase. Okay, and finally, our last player is Alan Varela, who is 22 years old, U23 until 2026, contract until 2028, which is very, very nice. He plays for Porto in the Portuguese league. My biggest worry with him is him getting a move from Porto into Europe and going and being a bench player. If he stays next season, looking at his price range currently, he is about £32 to £35, and he's someone that is just very, very consistent. Basically starts every game. You obviously get the Champions League utility as well. He's definitely more of a sort of plug and play option when you need someone to actually fill in. I wouldn't say he's your explosive star player. However, he's always going to get you somewhere between 45 to 60. You can see that especially in the last 15 games, he's averaging 16.9 AA. So yeah, very, very consistent. Does lack the upside, however. Plays in that sort of holding role, so he doesn't really get a lot of DAs, but he gets a lot of passes, tackles, that sort of thing. And yeah, obviously playing for Porto, one of the dominant teams in Portugal. Plays every game, very consistent. But yeah, the biggest worry for me is him moving into Europe and then being a squad player. However, if he stays, should be a really nice car for you, especially in those special weeklies and cap competitions. Maybe not in your star teams. However, you can obviously plug and play him in those nice matchups and he isn't really going to kill you. Okay, guys, that is going to be all for today's video. We have gone through a lot of U23 options, all of them under £50 and all of them players that you can use for next season. If you've got any questions about any of those players, please let me know down in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.